Hi guys, how are we doing? Thanks for joining me once again on this Saturday morning for 5 more viewer stories. Now, I don't have a lot to say before this first story gets read out. All I'll say is it is a bit of a marathon with the 5 stories, so I'm going to jump straight in with number 1.
สวัสดีค่ะ
This is my story of how I met my wife. I will keep it as relevant as possible because it annoys me to listen to stories where guys rattle on for 10 minutes about details that contribute nothing to the story. I grew up poor on a farm in British Columbia and was working since I was 10 years old, which lit a fire in me to never have to live like that again. With years of 80-hour weeks, huge risks and some losses, I managed to retire at 31 with a high 7 figures in cash and investments. Not a new Ferrari or a Rolex collection and 25-meter yachts lifestyle, but one where I would never need to worry again. With my assets, I have always kept a very low profile, driving cheap older cars and never having huge flashy places to live to keep away gold diggers. Soon after retiring, I had a really bad accident and ended up getting a mid-6-figure insurance payout and decided to take my thrashed body to a warm climate to spend a year or so relaxing. I ended up in northern Thailand in a small town, and wandering through the market, I spotted a stunningly gorgeous, obviously half Thai lady, 5'10", maybe 125 pounds, gorgeous smile, etc. If you want a reference to look up on Google Images, she is almost identical to Victoria's Secret's model Lily Aldridge from back in the day. I walked around the other side of the stalls to spy on her from another side, but she had spotted me. Not hard in Thailand, as I am 6'4", and was waiting for me to come around the other side. She gave me a wonderful smile in perfect English, said hello and commented on my shirt with Vancouver on it. Kind of shocked, of course, I went in to talk to her, and apparently both of us were wowed, and I invited her out for dinner. We had a very deep level connection instantly. It turns out her mother was Thai and her father was from Vancouver, and she was born and raised in Vancouver as well. When she was 9 years old, her father died of a heart attack, so she and her mother moved back to northern Thailand, and she had just gotten over and taking care of her mother, who was fighting cancer for several years and had passed away a couple of months before. She had no close relatives and was trying to eke out a meagre living selling in the market. I told her I had a small investment and saved a little, but really downplayed everything I had. She had never had a boyfriend, obviously had no idea how to be a girlfriend, but caught on quick. She is not into any sort of drama, no games, no spending money foolishly, or the usual female stuff. She eventually figured out that I was much more than I pretended to be, but it's still frugal. She does not want me to buy her expensive bags and clothes, as she would rather make them for herself. She does not have an email, so no social media, and does not want or need a cell phone. We love doing almost all the same things and have opposite personalities. She is very shy and introverted, and I am not, but it blends perfectly, and we have never had a fight in the last 15 years. Southwestern British Columbia has a Mediterranean climate, so we spend spring to fall here, as it rarely gets over 27 degrees, and we travel around much of the winter. For being genuinely sweet, honest and caring, and who loves aerobics very regular, she gets to live in a soft life in a nice house with a swimming pool, spa and hot tub for skinny dips. Her own craft room to do whatever she wants, a nice garden to play around in and travel. After 15 years, she still weighs 125 pounds and somehow still looks under 30. I never imagined I would find anyone like her after dating entitled Vancouver women. That is about it, and I hope you find this interesting after all the tales of woe and misery about guys getting worked over by bar girls. So that's quite a nice story there, and it is really nice to hear of a story that worked out. She sounds like she was already a bit westernized because she was born in Vancouver, but as long as it's working out for them, that's great news to hear. Right, let's jump straight into story number 2. On my first trip to Thailand in 2004, I was in my mid-20s and had just finished graduate school in the US. I was in the Stumble Inn bar, or whatever it was called before, near the corner of Soy 3 in Sukhumvit. An American seated next to me heard me order a beer, and he realized right away that I was American. He was from Chicago, and I lived in New York at the time. He asked me what I thought of Thailand, and I told him how great it was and how I was walking near Nana Plaza the previous night when a guy with an elephant came walking from one of the side alleys and asked me if I would buy some bananas from him to feed his elephant. Of course, I said. I bought bananas and I fed the elephant. I told the guy at the bar that no one would ever ask you to feed an elephant in a nightmare area in America. He told me that he had lived in Thailand for a while and married a Thai woman and lived in Assam. This conversation with a man occurred at the end of a 2-week trip, and at various bars I had already spoken with expats from Western Europe, and from them I learned about the problem of a woman's friend and family trying to access as much of a Western man's money as possible after he marries a Thai woman. So I asked him how he handled all the Thais that knew his wife begging him for money. He explained to me that he was on a disability pay from the US military, and his pension from the government was only $1,200 a month, which is a small income for an American. He said that all his wife's family and friends asked him for money after they got married, and it created a lot of conflict in the marriage. He said to solve the problem, he gave his wife access to the account where he received his disability pay and provided her with pay statements however he received them. He told his wife, look, $1,200 is all we have coming in each month. You decide how we spend the money. After he did that, his wife gave her parents a small payment of about $200 each month from his account, and she told everyone else to get lost. She bought all the household items, and he worked in the garden every day, planting and harvesting many of the crops they ate. He said it was a huge garden, but it was not quite a farm. He said that his wife was a former bar girl, but by agreement with her, he was allowed to travel alone to Bangkok and stay by himself once a year. I was surprised she would let him do that, since she was a former bar girl herself and knew of all the Bangkok temptations. At the end of the conversation, he asked me to guess how old he was. In the US, you can join any of the branches of the military at the age of 18. I guessed he joined at a young age and was rendered partly disabled at the start of his career. I added a few years to my guess, given that he was asking me to guess his age, with the implication that he was a few years older than he appeared. I told him that he was about 38, even though I thought he looked 35. I'm not kidding when he replied back to me that he was 61. He told me he served in the US Army during the Vietnam War and got injured early on. He was medically retired from the army and decided to live in Thailand with his disability pay that he had been receiving since the 1960s. He asked me if I had been to Asok and seen Soy Cowboy. When I said yes, he said he met the American that the soy was named after, who was also a Vietnam veteran. I was in absolute shock. I almost thought he was lying, as he really did look like he was in his 30s. He had blue eyes, light brown hair, and looked like he avoided the sun. He told me he wore a big hat and a long-sleeved shirt while farming, like the Thais do. Anyway, I thought this story would be interesting. If you marry a poor woman from Thailand or any other country, have all or a portion of your income go into an account and give your wife access to it. Tell her that it is all the income you have. With Adobe AI or a photo editing app, you can even generate fake pay or retirement statements and tell her to deal with her friends and relatives asking for money, explaining she should decide who gets what after the bills are paid. Yeah, this can often be a big problem with guys that date Thai women. The culture is very, very different here. It's not a bad thing, but it's just the culture is different to the Western culture. And the girl is expected to take care of her mother and siblings and lots of the other members of the family, and sometimes it can put pressure on a relationship because the guy doesn't understand. Maybe he doesn't have enough money. But what this guy's described in this story about having a separate bank account, I think is a very good idea, because she then has control of what she thinks is all of the money, and it's going to cut out all the arguments, isn't it? Okay, let's jump into story number 3 of 5 today. About 10 years ago, I walked through customs on what was then my 7th or 8th trip to Thailand. As I received my luggage and headed to the taxi stand, I saw a cute brunette standing at the end of the queue, messing with her phone. She stared at me, and I thought nothing of it, as people stare at me often in Asia because I'm very tall. I said to myself, this could be interesting, and I walked over to her and started a conversation. It turns out that she was from a town in New Jersey and had been living in China for a year teaching English. At the time, I lived on the Upper West Side in New York City, but I had also lived in New Jersey, not too far from her hometown. Let's call her Rachel. We talked for a while online, and I realised soon that she wanted to share my cab ride into Bangkok, partly so she could get a free ride, and partly to continue the conversation with me. It turns out that she was in Bangkok to meet her boyfriend, who was a British guy who taught English in the same town that she did in China. She told me the name of the town, but its name went through one of my ears and out the next, as it was not a major city and I've never heard of it. Her boyfriend had flown back to the UK, but he was meeting her in Bangkok the next night, so she had that night and the next day free, while she waited in Bangkok for him. She told me that her boyfriend had paid for a hotel room for the both of them for 4 nights in an area of Bangkok far from the tourist areas of Sukhumvit, On Nut and Khao Sun Road. I looked at her printout of where the hotel was, down some alley off a soi in an area of Bangkok I'd never been to. When she showed me where it was, I wondered why he just didn't get a hotel room for them in the backpacker area of Khao Sun Road. She asked me if I wanted to hang out with her that night. I said yes. I was a little tired from my journey from America, but I would get a cup of coffee near my hotel and I would show her around. She held out her phone and said, "Let's take a selfie together. I want to send my family a picture of my new friend from New York City that I met in Thailand." She then asked me if she could add me on Facebook. I knew she was sending a picture of us to her family and friending me on Facebook as a safety precaution, since she didn't know me that well. Prior to taking the photos, she asked me where I worked and precisely where I lived, all of which I answered honestly. I told her that I needed to go to my hotel first to take a shower since I had been travelling for more than 25 hours. Also, because her hotel was in the middle of nowhere, it would be better for her to wait for me at my hotel or a bar near my hotel, which was the Doubletree Hilton near Nana, a nice 4-star hotel, rather than she paying for a cab all the way from my hotel to her place and then paying for a cab back to my hotel, where all the action was. She agreed. After the cab ride to the hotel, while checking into the hotel, there was an awkward moment when the receptionist asked my friend for her passport, thinking she would stay with me. I told the receptionist that it wasn't necessary for her to show her passport and that she was not staying with me. To make her feel more comfortable, I said, "You don't have to come up to my room. You can wait for me in the hotel lobby or at the hotel bar." But she said she felt okay coming up to the room with me. We entered my room with a nice view and king-size bed. She threw back her things down, took off her shoes and lay on the bed. I took my backpack with passport and wallet to the bathroom with me, as well as a change of clothes, while she lay on the bed and used her phone. While showering, I wondered if she told her family that she was laying on the bed of an American guy that she'd literally just met at the airport a couple of hours earlier. I bet she was thinking, I can't believe this guy let me into his hotel and took a shower with all his stuff lying in a few feet from me. She didn't realise that my checked luggage had only clothes and that all my valuables, including laptop, currency, passport, wallet, etc., were in the bathroom with me. At the time, I wondered if she was checking out my Facebook profile and speaking with her family or boyfriend by WhatsApp. I came out of the bathroom shirtless and she looked at me while I finished drying myself and I put on a fresh shirt. She stood up and gave me a hug and said, "I thank you for letting me hang out with her that night." I wanted to know what kind of a night it would be, so I slowly kissed her. I thought if she rebuffed me, I could hang out with her for an hour or two and send her on her way. She didn't rebuff me and kiss me back. We left the hotel and went to a bar restaurant on Soi 4. I bought us dinner, some beers and a coffee for me. After dinner, she told me that she wanted to watch me have aerobics with a Thai bar girl. I was frank with her and I told her that I would never have aerobics in front of someone else because it would feel awkward and I would be afraid of someone taking a picture. She told me that she would agree to place her phone in view and not pick it up, and her phone was the only camera she had. I told her it would still be awkward. I told her that the only way I would do it is if she herself participated, turning it into a threesome. She said that she liked me, but she had a boyfriend that was coming the next day, and she would feel guilty if she slept with me. After we finished dinner, we headed over to Nana Plaza. She wanted to see a few of the bars and watch the girls dance. During a couple of the shows, she leaned over to me and said, "This one is nice," or "How about her?" The girls thought we were a couple and didn't linger at our table, although we did order drinks, which we largely didn't finish since neither one of us is a big drinker. She wanted to go to a ladyboy bar, so we did, and she was shocked at how much they looked like women. Some of the men there looked very beautiful. That sounds strange saying that, but they really did look like women. She asked me if I would try a ladyboy, and I told her that there was no way it would happen. In our final bar, I ordered drinks for us and headed to the bathroom. When I got back, a Thai bar girl was smiling at me saying, "I go with you and your girlfriend tonight?" I smiled at Rachel and asked her if she was participating. She said no, so I told the Thai bar girl that we both just had gotten in and were too tired. By this time it was 2 a.m. and she asked me to help her get back to her hotel. We went back to my hotel and we grabbed her bags. Earlier in the night, she told me she was in an open relationship with her boyfriend. We talked about if she was going to stay the night with me, but she was worried that she would lose the hotel reservation. In America, at some hotels, if you don't show up for the first night of a multi-day hotel stay, hotels will normally cancel your reservation and keep the whole amount prepaid for the hotel. She asked me how to help her get to her hotel. I could tell that Bangkok still intimidated her a bit. I stopped a cab off Sukhumvit and handed the driver a printout that she had of where her hotel was. We negotiated a fare and we drove for about 30 minutes to get to her hotel. The driver let us out by some dimly lit alley and told us the hotel was down there. For a moment, I thought he was wrong and asked the guy if he was sure. He said yes in broken English. He pointed to his ID on the visor of his cab and he said he has been a taxi driver in Bangkok for 20 years. With that, we got out and looked around for her hotel. I'm not kidding. When I tell you it took 15 minutes to find her hotel, it was a tiny, nondescript hotel that we only found by asking staff at another hotel where it was. By the time we found it, she was getting nervous that we would never find it and that she would lose their reservation and have to explain to her boyfriend why she couldn't find the hotel 6 hours after landing in Bangkok and why she never messaged him about the problem via WhatsApp. When we found the hotel, she was a little embarrassed. It was really a worn-down 2-star dump. Carpets from the 1980s in the lobby. It smelled of cigarette smoke and everything in the building looked at least 30 years old. She was 10 years younger than me, working as a tutor, and I thought she had nothing to be embarrassed about. As she checked in, I stayed beside her and she said thank you so much and hugged me. I didn't know how to respond to the hug, so I walked up to her hotel room with her. When we got to the hotel room, she beckoned me to come inside with her, as though I was her boyfriend or something. I walked in her room with her and set her luggage down, like I was her bellhop. She hugged me again, and for a few seconds after, I set down the luggage, and then she said she had to go to the bathroom. When she got out of the bathroom, I was standing away from the bed, looking out of the window into the dimly lit alley. I got the impression that she was embarrassed about the room. She came to meet me at the window and we started kissing. In less than a few minutes, we were undressing each other and we ended up having aerobics that night. Instead of waking up in the DoubleTree, I spent the night with her in that dingy hotel room in the alley. In the morning, we showered and I took her to breakfast and coffee just a few hours before her boyfriend was scheduled to arrive from the UK. We stayed in contact via Facebook. Within a year, she and her boyfriend split up and she was back living in New York City, but by then, I moved across the country to work in San Francisco. Just some final things. Others and I have benefited greatly from your viewers' stories and travel tips, so I thought I would share some of my tips. I have travelled to over 30 countries in Europe, South America, Asia, and North Africa. I've often travelled with girlfriends or friends, but sometimes I've travelled alone. Here are my travel tips. Number one, stay in a good quality hotel. I always stay in a 4-star or 5-star hotel. Outside of the US and UK, they are much cheaper, often a third of the price, and they seem to take care of their guests and their luggage things. I justify spending a lot on hotels because I don't drink that much alcohol, and normally I eat only 2 meals a day. Two, whenever I've had a problem in life, traveling or otherwise, it was because I didn't prepare myself for the risks. After some mishaps early in life, I've gotten better at anticipating risks. I travel with 2 wallets. One stays in a safe and has all my credit and debit cards. The other has one form of government ID, but not my passport. The second wallet also has 2 to 3 times the cash I think I'll spend that day. If a woman comes to my room, all of my valuables are in the safe, and I only have the wallet with cash outside of the safe. Peter has said this before, but it's true. Never be led anywhere in the world. The person leading you will always appear to be non-threatening, an older woman or man or a young pretty girl, but they can lead you to some very bad situations. Some friends of mine in Germany last year got led into a strip club in Hamburg by a hot girl, and they got in a bad situation buying drinks, and it cost them $500 to get out of the club after an hour. Had they not paid, some bouncers from Eastern Europe would have beaten the crap out of them. It's important to note that my German friends were German guys in Germany, but they still got taken advantage of. Put yourself in the shoes of the person you'll be dealing with. If you were born in a life of poverty, consider how you might feel or what you might be tempted to do when dealing with a wealthy foreigner. If they cheat you out of a couple of $100, don't worry about it. This is a final point that Peter and I disagree about. Bargain for services and things that might cost you serious money over time, especially in Southeast Asia and East Asia. Everything is negotiable, including the price of a short time, long time, happy endings, art and souvenirs you bring home. For working girls, they care about what you look like, where you're staying, the quality of your hotel, how far away it is from where they are working. And if you could be a repeat customer of income, sponsor, etc. If I'm not happy with the price of anything anywhere in the world, I just decline or walk away. Often the person selling whatever it is will lower their price. Okay, so there's some good tips there, but I just want to clear up something he said, which wasn't quite accurate. He said that we disagree about bargaining. What I'd said in the past was, yeah, for sure, if you're in a market or a shop where you can bargain, try and negotiate. And I've never personally tried to negotiate the price of some things, like I wouldn't go to Terminal 21, go to one of the big shops and try to negotiate in that situation. But where we disagree is I won't negotiate the price of a meal from a street vendor. So if you've got some woman there who's doing 16 hours a day cooking and she's selling a pad thai for 50 or 60 baht, I won't say to her, can I have it for 40 baht or 35 baht? Because I'm happy to pay the full price because I can see she's scraping a meager living out of her food cart, and I'm very happy to help her out. If she's made me a nice cheap meal, then I'm happy to pay the full price for it. There's no way in this world I'm going to negotiate with a food seller on the street or somebody who's selling little trinkets for 20, 30 baht. That's so I just wanted to clear that up because that's how I operate. Okay, let's jump in. We've got 2 more to go. Let's jump into story number 4. I've got a story that your viewers may find interesting and informative. A few years ago, I was in Pattaya and bumped into an Irishman and we became friends. We drank in a little bar in Soy Honey, which was frequented by many expats, mainly Irish like my friend Frank. Although only in his early 40s, he said he didn't need to work and was looking for a solid investment in Thailand to give him a modest return and interest to occupy his time. Like me, he had been involved in the bar trade back home, so maybe he could open a bar in Pattaya, but would have to have a niche to compete with all the other hundreds of bars there. A week or so later, he said, I've got it. I'm opening an Irish-themed bar called Mrs. Brown's Boys after the comedy series so popular back home. I'll just cut in at this point. I've changed the name of the person and the name of the bar so that if the guy's still around, he can't be identified. His friends, especially the Irish ones, thought it a great idea and promised to support him when it opened. Over the next couple of months, we stayed in touch and he had met a local lady. They found large premises in Soy Honey and he arranged to buy and renovate it into his bar. His girlfriend lived a few miles away with her mother, but he was comfortable because he didn't have any talk about a sick mother needing medical assistance. She said she had sufficient money from a previous marriage and no kids, so she didn't need his money. Just an income from a job, which made Frank more relaxed that he wasn't getting involved with a scammer. She stayed with him some nights, but usually went back to see her mother. He was relaxed because she hardly ever had calls in his company and they were getting closer. The bar purchase was getting to completion and he had no qualms about putting the property in her name in accordance with the law. As he was advised, for the next month, the bar was totally renovated and he acquired lots of Mrs. Brown Boys memorabilia, like pictures, pub mirrors and clocks, presumably found on Amazon. I'm not sure. As a result of word of mouth in Pattaya, the opening night was very busy and the following weeks were the same. All looked good. He decided to invest in a good kitchen to offer Irish stews and other simple items at an attractive price. He thought the outlay would be more than paid for in a few months. He had now had the bar with his girlfriend for about 4 months when his girlfriend said her mother was becoming poorly and wanted to return to the family home to be with the rest of the family. Frank offered to pay for the airfare, but she said no, her uncle would pick her up in a couple of days and she didn't need any money. Although sad, Frank was convinced that she was genuine. 2 weeks later, she said her mother had died and she was going to the funeral. Frank offered to go, but she wanted to go alone. A week later, she returned and said she didn't want to live where she had with her mother and wanted a place nearer to the bar. His condo was too small, so he looked for a place for both of them. They found a nice place near Beach Road and he bought it again in her name. Next step, things were so good they were together most of the time at home or in the bar, except for a couple of times a week when she told him she was seeing friends. He then proposed to her and she accepted. The wedding was planned in a month. He then contacted me and asked if I could come over and stay in his house and just look after the bar. Nothing much, just open the bar and close later, also collect take-ins from the assistant and bank them and deal with any small problems that arose. I was happy to go and my flight was arranged for the day after he left for the honeymoon. This is when it gets messy. I arrived in Pattaya and went straight to the bar to introduce myself to the staff and get his house keys. The staff were most unhelpful and I couldn't get Frank on his phone to tell him what was happening. I walked out of the bar and went to the bar where I had first met him and noticed his friends were there. I explained to them what had happened and I was totally confused. They then explained that 2 days previously they had been in Mrs. Brown's Boys and had heard loud voices. It was Frank and his girlfriend. He told them that she didn't love him and would not marry him and that she wanted him to leave the bar. He was obviously very upset and was shouting at her when police arrived to eject him. The following morning, there was a knock at his door. 2 policemen were there to arrest him for causing a disturbance in the bar and told him to bring the passport to the police station. One policeman went to push Frank and he pushed him back. In the police station, he was told that he would have to pay 30,000 baht fine for the bar disturbance and 20,000 baht for assaulting the policeman. No appeal, pay now or go to prison until a court appearance in a few weeks. He paid, and this was noted on his passport. He was then told the police would take him back to his house, collect his things and drive him to the airport. He went back to Ireland knowing he was barred from Thailand for 5 years. He was devastated to lose his money, his business and his girlfriend. He didn't immediately realise he'd been scammed. Then his friend told him the policeman who had arrested him was in fact his girlfriend's husband. He had been the victim of a patient-long scam. What can I say, guys? It's one of those scams, isn't it? It's happened so many times down there in Pattaya. Guy meets girl, guy falls in love with girl, thinks she's different, buys a bar in her name, buys an apartment in her name, and once it's all in her name, her Thai husband or a Thai boyfriend turns up, and he's finished. It happened, the story I read out the other week there about Thomas, who had the same problem. This guy went back to Ireland, must have been devastated. Never put a bar in a Thai girl's name. You're just asking for it, really. Okay, look, we're going to go into our final and fifth story. This one's a bit shorter. Now, I have read this story out quite a long time ago. It's a reread, as I said. I did promise that I'd tell you if it was a repeat story, but as I've got a lot more subscribers now, I'm guessing quite a lot of people won't have heard this story. Okay, so we'll finish off with this, our fifth and final story. This story didn't happen in Thailand, but I thought I would send it as I was Thailand bound when it occurred. This occurred in the airport at Kuala Lumpur as I was awaiting my connection to BKK. I was sitting on a row of chairs in a corridor outside of my gate when a man about the same age as me sat down in the seat next to me, despite being the whole row of chairs being empty. The man started talking to me. Very soon after, a lady came over who the man said was his wife. She lay down on the row of seats, resting her head on his lap. The man told me he was from Sri Lanka and asked me if I'd heard of Sri Lanka before. I told him I had and that I was a cricket fan. I started listing off the names of as many Sri Lankan cricketers as I could remember. He seemed impressed by this. The man told me his kids had been on Sri Lanka's Got Talent. He asked if I wanted to see some video footage of them. He then proceeded to play a video of two teenage boys doing tricks on Yamaha trail bikes. I didn't think the tricks were that great, actually. Obviously, I didn't tell him that. The video seemed to go on for way too long. The man's wife had gone to sleep on his lap. He put a finger on his lips as if to say shh. He then started playing a aerobics video on his phone. He was smiling at me. I thought, oh great, I was in a strict Muslim country in an airport with CCTV everywhere and I'm watching aerobics with a Sri Lankan guy. I had visions of being arrested and detained. After about 30 seconds or so of watching aerobics with my new Sri Lankan friend, I saw a man walking down the corridor towards us who looked remarkably like Kim Jong-un. As that man got close to us, my new friend yelled out at him, "Hey, Rocket Man!" The man looked over. My friend said, "Yeah, you, Rocket Man." I took this as my cue to leave as I did not want to be involved in any incident. I grabbed my carry-on bag and walked away without saying goodbye. When my gate was open, I returned to the area. There was no sign of my Sri Lankan friend or the Kim Jong-un lookalike. To end this is a sort of true story from Bangkok airport. On one of my trips where I was being mistaken for Sir Anthony Hopkins, I was at Suvarnabhumi airport on my way back to Australia. I had cleared immigration and was waiting for the gate to open. A Thai boy of probably 17 or 18 years old was looking at me strangely. He then came over and in broken English nervously asked me if he could take a selfie with me. I said sure. After taking half a dozen selfie shots with me, he nervously asked me for my autograph. He was shaking with nervousness, excitement. It was obvious he thought I was someone famous. I signed the back of his boarding pass to my number one fan. The signature I used was unreadable. To this day, I have no idea of what he thought I was. I'm definitely not famous, and I look a lot more like Homer Simpson than I do Sir Anthony Hopkins. A great little story there. I thought it was well worth a second read. Right, if you're new to this channel and you're scratching your head and saying what's wrong with watching aerobics videos, aerobics is a word that I use in all of my stories to explain a physical act between a man and woman, or a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, in fact. I don't want to say the word in case YouTube demonetized my videos. So everybody, most of my regulars know what aerobics actually means. It doesn't mean kind of real aerobics. So I hope that explains that. Okay. A bit of a long upload today, so I'm going to end it here. Thanks again for listening to me for quite a long time, and I'll be back next Saturday with some more brand new stories. Thanks again, guys.